a lot of the jobs that you want or getting into industry, it's not going to be off of a job post that's on LinkedIn. By the time the job post is on LinkedIn, they've already started thinking about who they're hiring. Most jobs in commercial come from network and referrals. I left the north to move down south. And at the time, it was because it was easier for me to move than it was for my husband to move his jobs. But that took me out of that comfort zone, and it brought me into having to adapt to new teams, new ways of working, new hospitals.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Skilled Personnel Network. My name is Fodi Kyriakos. Delighted to have you back, and we got the co-host with us with the most.
Morning or evening or everyone, I'm Boz, reporting radiographer up north now, but I'm a southerner.
And before I introduce today's guest, if I've got red eyes, it's because pre-recording, both Boz and our new guest, who's going to introduce herself, has just had me in hysterics. And before that, what I'd like to ask, as I do at the beginning of every podcast now, is to ask every radiographer who's watching this to subscribe, to share with other radiographers. We want to get these stories out to as many radiographers as we possibly can. So please, if you can, that'd be great. And thank you very, very much for your support. So I'm delighted to introduce someone who's going to introduce herself to the podcast. Welcome, Saduf.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. Hi everyone. Saduf Ali-Drakesmith, radiographer by trade, and currently dabbling in the dark side and in industry. It's really good to be here, though. So thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure. Now,
thanks for joining us.
Yeah, and welcome. Welcome to the CrossRoADS podcast. This is about essentially as archetypal or stereotype of a journey that we'd like to share as we're possibly going to get. Someone who's gone from clinical to commercial. So very excited to dig into that. We've got loads to catch up on, and firstly, what I'd like to find out from you, as I do from all of our guests, Saduf, is how did you become a radiographer? What was the inspiration behind joining the profession or becoming a radiographer? And had you come from a family of healthcare professionals?
Oh my gosh. So I've always known I wanted to do something medical. Like, there's just been this innate desire to want to help people and make a change, but I didn't know what I wanted to do in medicine. Like, I just knew it was going to be something in healthcare. And this will probably resonate with a lot of people from, my parents migrated here. Well, no, my mum was born here, but my dad came over, and their belief and desire was, you'll go to university, you'll do something with your life that, they maybe never got the opportunity to do. So university was always going to be on the cards. And I think my mum and dad were very adamant that if it wasn't on the cards, then either you're getting married or you're getting a job, right? You're not at home. You will move on. And again, I think in Asian culture, it was become a doctor or a lawyer or a pharmacist. So I knew I was never going to be clever enough to be a doctor. I'm not that studious. I did loads of work experience, and none of them really floated my boat. I remember going to a work experience at a pharmacy, and I was bored out my head within about half an hour. And I was like, no, I can't do this. I remember going to a dental surgeon and doing some work experience in dentistry. There were some sites I saw that made me realize that was not for me.
Yeah, I bet.
Oh, could you imagine? I remember the first real gum disease and rotting teeth. And I think the gentleman that we saw had several. And I remember just realizing very quickly when he spoke that this was not something I had the stomach for. Um, and then I dabbled in optometry, and I actually got a Saturday job out of that, which was not so bad. But again, I realized that just wasn't for me either. I needed something more dynamic. I needed something, I don't know, just something with a bit more oomph and not repetitive. I think that was the key thing for me. And I remember going back to my careers advisor, and by which point she must have just been sick of the sight of me. And she went, there's this new career that we're pushing called radiography. And honestly, my first thought was, oh, I don't want to be in radio. Like, that's not for me. And then she said, no, it's in the hospital. And again, I thought, I don't want to do hospital radio.
Hospital radio.
That was exactly it. And I'm thinking, what have I done to upset her? That this is what, and I was like, fine, okay, I'll go along. And that was it. Honestly, I think day one, I was hooked. There was so much variety. There were so many specialties to go into. I did a week's work experience and not one day was the same as the other. And it just clicked. I just realized that, this is what I want to do.
When you got that week experience, was it, so you mentioned like the job, the dynamicism of it, I don't think that's a word, but whatever, how it changes, and that is massively true. Do you think the people you were working with made a difference? Do you think that could have changed your mind at all? Do you think that affected?
Because I remember on my work experience, like the first woman I met, she was scary. And she properly was very old school, very matron-like. And I remember once I'd decided that this was my career, and even in my clinical practice, I was back at Huddersfield Royal Infirmary, as it was called then. And Margaret was actually like one of my mentors. And as much as she was frightening, when I look back now, she's one of those women that I know shaped my career. And so, it's inevitable that the women around you and the people around you impact and shape your career and have such a strong influence on how it goes, for sure. I still think of her fondly, even though I still remember the feeling.
Still a bit scared of her. I think we all have that in our careers. Those people that I don't know if they realise how much of an effect they've had on our careers, and I think it's something people need to remember, that when you have a work experience person with you, you can make or break selling your profession.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
massively. Because I was so the university I was applying to, when I applied, you were allowed to have as many shadowing days as you wanted on application. Whereas now, I think because of the amount of applicants, you're only allowed to do one visiting day, because they just can't take them. And I know for a fact that if I had only had one, I wouldn't be a radiographer today.
Agreed. You just, you're not going to get a real feel for what the role can entail and just how many different career paths there are, even in the radiology department, right? If you're only doing one day, even if they showed you CT, MR, ultrasound, the cardiovascular suite, it would be such a fleeting glance, right?
Yep.
That you'd never actually get any feel for what any of those different specialties mean and could work
and
for you.
Also, you don't know that you can't feel what it's like to be in, because people not in healthcare don't realise that when you walk through a hospital door in a uniform, you are walking into a different world. It is so different from a 9-to-5 office job.
Yeah.
Where you walk in, do your job, and walk out again. It's cliche and annoying, but it is a city or a family, depending on where you work or which hospital you work with. And I think that can make or break your experience as well. If you walk into the wrong department that you just don't fit into,
No, and also though, it depends on what's going on in that department as well, right? You and I both probably have experiences of days that went really well because everything's working on time, all the kit's working, everyone's turned up. And, just like what we were saying before we started recording, the sun's shining, you've had a good drive into work, and you're in a completely different mindset to, you were running late, there's a massive RTA, you've had a recess call, the theatre person hasn't turned up. And so there's so many things that impact as well that then can completely change the outlook of your day.
And if you get caught on one of those days for your experience day, you're going to have a negative experience.
Yeah. You can't just do it in one day. No. I would never have... Sorry, Foddy.
That's why you carry.
No, I was just saying, I would just be like, Boz there, if I'd have only had one day instead of that week that I'd had, I don't think radiography would have appealed to me either.
I think that, capturing what you're both saying there is really, really important for any students and newly grads in some ways that are, moving into the profession, more so than those that are actually thinking about it as well, but also for those thinking about it. But for the students in particular, that mentor, Boz and I talk about this a lot, Saduf, which is the importance of that mentor. And often I think you raise a really, really good point, Boz, around do they know that they are a mentor? Do they know that they've had that much of a, because sometimes people just, they just lead by example, and this is just them doing what they do. And part of the whole process of putting this podcast together is to help champion and cheerlead. So feel free during this, Saduf, to plug away on any people that have been, mentors or important in your journey, because I think we need to cheerlead these people as much as possible.
Yeah, 100%.
Totally agree.
So where did you study?
Up north, can you not tell?
I can tell that. I'm going to guess Bradford.
Foddy, you can't pull off that accent at all.
I know, I'm crap at accents. I just don't know why I even bother. Really posh accents.
All my accents just sound like Welsh. I don't know. I'm just terrible at them as well. So, other than obviously my natural accent. So, University of Bradford.
Yes, of course it was.
Yeah. Of course it was. So I lived in Huddersfield and nipped over to Bradford for uni, and it was so much fun to have that experience of being away from home but still like close enough to home. Like I could go back easily and drop washing off, or if I needed a proper home cooked meal or just, but then on the flip side, I wasn't at home, so it was still awesome, right? You get both bits. But I only lived away from home for probably a few months, maybe a year or so. I quickly realized as well that I could be very easily distracted. And so being at home just helped refocus me back onto actually studying and not just experiencing uni nightlife.
Doing uni.
Yeah. So yeah,
I'm about to have my daughter go to university, so the less you tell me about that uni life, the better.
Oh no, it's everyone just.
I didn't go out for day.
Everyone just sits in the library.
Yeah, it was either the library
lectures, library, sleep.
That's what I thought. That's what.
Yeah.
Nothing else at all, I promise.
Oh wow, yeah. Well, do you know what? Look, the thing is, you went to Bradford University, and then you ended up staying there. So is that where your placement was, and you just got sucked in?
No, so my placement was actually in Huddersfield, which was where I lived. Which of course, Mum was like, "Oh, you should just stay at home. You don't need to go." And I was
no.
And yeah, it was just funny the way it worked out, because obviously, so Bradford being up in Yorkshire, it might not be obvious to some people, there were sort of 7 or 8 hospitals that you could be a part of. and so and all the way through to like Bradford, Wakefield, Pinderfield, Pontefract type edge, and Huddersfield was, I think, the most that you could go west. So yeah, I ended up at Huddersfield, which was great because yes, it's home, but it was not so great in other aspects. Like there were so many people that we knew that would come in and they'd be like, oh, well, if you're working here, you need to get me into the doctor ASAP. And I'm like, no, I don't have that much impact at all.
I had exactly the same experience. It's like, I know you, but not helping you. I can't pull every string. I don't, can you get me a specialist? No, absolutely not. I'm a student radiographer. I know nothing and nobody.
I know. It's crazy though, but Buzz, you touched on it then. When you put on that uniform, right? Nobody sees whether it's a student uniform or what. They just see it's a uniform, it's a position of knowledge and some sort of authority, and therefore go and influence for me. And I'm like, no, do you not see I have no stripes on my top? My top's just white. If once you qualified, you got the little band of colour. I didn't have the band of colour. Don't have any influence. But yeah, friends and family never saw that at all. It was just go and help, do what you can, get me my appointment quickly.
I'd imagine there's a lot of people resonating with what you're saying. I mean, even as someone who's never been a radiographer, hands up, but has spent so much time working with you guys, it's amazing how many times people will sort of like, oh, can you get me a scan? Get me a scan, and they're almost like a bit of Del Boy. Well, I can get you an MRI.
Yeah, I've just got a CT scanner in my pocket.
Yeah, let me just whip out my point of care ultrasound device, which hadn't even been invented back then. Oh, just aged myself there. Oops.
Well, do you know what? Actually, Saduf, so let's, before we delve into your career a bit more and the CrossRoADS bits, for those that are watching this and listening to this and thinking, well, who's Saduf? We know her something else. Should we do that elephant in the room moment where, those people, all these years, I had to deal with the fact that people that knew me as Fody had to find out that he's Fody, and I never corrected them because I'm far too polite. And then we got obviously Boz's pseudonym because, as he said, no one can explain Baruch or say Baruch without it maybe turning into something else. But I mean, certainly we could have lots of fun with this with the three of us. So I'm going to tell us about that, how that pseudonym, how people know you, and what you're trying to do with your identity.
Oh, so a lot of people know me as Duffy. And this came about because I'd qualified. So once I qualified, somebody had told me that if you qualify and you end up working at the hospital where you qualified from, one, nobody will ever take you past the seriousness because you'll always be a student to some people, and you end up getting stuck. Like, it's a place of comfort, it's a place of familiarity, and therefore the jump to a next place is always harder. And this person was like, just do the jump immediately, like qualify and move somewhere else. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. And that's exactly what I did. I qualified and I moved and applied for a job at Bradford University, Bradford Royal Infirmary, it was called at the time. And yeah, that's where I started my career. A&E trauma was my love. And I remember we'd had a particularly rough night in A&E X-ray. And I'm not a shouty person. Like, I really don't tend to get angry. I'm probably one of those people that just goes silent more. But I shouted, and I shouted at the troops. And when you even frighten yourself and you're like, oh, where's that from? And everyone was like, oh my God, oh, matron, like everyone teases, and that's part of the love of the profession that we're in. Everyone just banters with everyone. But yeah, everyone was like, oh, matron. And then somebody went, oh, matron Duff or something. And then somebody went, oh, matron Duffy. And there used to be a program called Casualty back in the day. I don't know if either
I
of
think,
you remember
I think
this.
it's still.
Oh.
Is it not still? Is it not only just finished?
I don't know. Is it still even going?
I don't think it. I think it's just finished fairly
So
recently.
that's the program then. And I don't know if you remember, there was a character called Duffy, and she was a matron.
Yep.
And then somebody just sort of put that together with Saduf, Duffy, and then Duffy was born. And for ages, everyone has called me Duffy, which is great with family and friends. But I think work-wise, and especially in the commercial industry that I've now progressed into, I'm trying to make that distinction that Duffy is like friends and family, and so Saduf is what I'm called. And it's
There you
having
are.
various results, let's just say. There are some people who still can't pronounce it, and I'm sure both of you can relate to this. There are some bizarre pronunciations. I've even had somebody just sort of say, I don't know how to say that, I'll just call you Sam.
What?
I'd rather you didn't.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you know what? It's so hard because I'm so used to being called Boz that I mean, almost to the point where the university, when I qualified, they asked me what do I want on my certificate. I was like, I want my name, not a nickname. And it is hard. It must be hard to try and break away from it if everyone around you's calling you Duffy. Everyone
Yeah.
around me calls me Boz, and then you go and introduce yourself as Saduf or Baruch or like people. All my new students and things, they come in, they kind of go, who are you? I've heard of you as Boz, but you're introducing yourself as Baruch.
Now I'm
What's
so confused. Yeah.
it can be. I don't get annoyed about it anymore because it's just been so long. But it can be quite hard and confusing to know what to do yourself.
Yeah, and it's so intrinsically linked with your identity as well, right? You know,
Definitely.
I have some people who, and I guess it's different if you're shortening a name.
Yeah.
You know, like I was talking to somebody recently who is Dom to everyone, and I called him Dominic, and he even went, "Oh, like I feel like my mum's in the room." You know, we all have friends or people that we know who say like that. So it is so linked into your identity. But mine, it's not really a shortening of my name. It's just,
No, it's a proper nickname, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah. So
So
there we go.
I don't know. Like I said, I'm trying. And the thing is, I do love my name as well. It's
Yeah.
not like it's a name that I don't like. So yeah, it's just trying to meld that back in. And to be fair though, when I've been open around the reasons why, people have been so great about it. You know, I was chatting to Foddy and saying, this is a little off topic, but quite relevant, I think, especially considering we've just had International Women's Day at the weekend. I was in a presentation given by a woman called Karen Blackett. She's actually an OBE as well. She was the first Black officer of officer of the company for the advertising giant WPP. So real formidable woman, but she spoke about women who cover up, not in the literal sense, but cover up as in they change facets of their personality or appearance or, you know, the way that they are to either fit in more or to get ahead. And she was talking about, you know, it can be as obvious as changing the way you wear clothes. Like you might wear blacks and greys rather than colors. You might tie your hair a certain way. You might not wear your makeup the way that you normally would because you don't want to be seen as standing out or attracting the wrong kind of attention. She spoke about people who subtly change their accents to try and fit in more. You can tell that I've stopped doing that one. But yeah, And then the other big one that she talked about was especially people of color or people with different ethnic backgrounds changing and anglicizing their names.
It's a massive thing.
Yeah. And the minute she said it, I remember sitting there going, like, it was such a light bulb moment for me. That is this what I've done? I've just accepted a nickname that I'm all right with, but it wasn't my choosing. And it was one of those where sometimes I do find myself introducing myself as Duffy, because then I'm like, oh, Saduf's quite hard to pronounce. And it's not. It's 2 syllables. And it's literally as it's spelled, there's no other way to say it. And so, so that was part of the reasons why I've tried to push through this change as well. Because, I am proud of my roots. I'm proud of my name. I'm proud that it's an Arabic name. So that was also partly behind it.
No, I think that is an incredibly important point, because your name, not only is it your name, and you might, depending on who's calling you Duffy, it means a different thing. If those people that work that night shift with you call you Duffy, it's like a hug. Well done, we've got through this. It's a nickname. When you have to introduce yourself as Duffy, you're kind of almost belittling yourself. When I introduce myself as so I'm Boz to most things, and I quite like Boz. I don't mind it.
Mm-hmm.
But in certain circumstances, if I introduce myself as Baruch and they say, "Can I call you Boz?" I will say no. The same way, we've got a lot of recently. We've had quite a few international recruits coming from all over the world, and I always try, because I've had a difficult to pronounce name, I will always make it, what do you want to be known as?
Yeah.
Because many of them shorten their names, like you said, or anglicize a slightly different spelling of how we've spelt it, things like that. But it changes how you see yourself when someone calls you something wrong. That you don't identify. If you don't identify as a name, you automatically change into someone who you aren't.
No, and for sure. And, so I recall an instance where, and this was when I left the NHS and moved into industry, and I'm introducing myself to a group of quite senior leaders in a room. And one of them made such a remark about my name. And he was like, oh, Saduf, like sod off.
Oh.
And that was it for the whole meeting. I was like on the back foot. And I was like, because normally I would have had some choice words if somebody decided to say that to me about my name.
100%.
But I was in a meeting with senior leaders. I was the only woman in the room. I was the only person of color in the room, and I was probably quite early on in my commercial career where I was like, I don't think I can address this. And the whole meeting, that's all I could think was, all of these men in this room have just joked about my name. They're not taking me seriously. And I remember walking out of that meeting just going, well, that was a disaster. Mm-hmm. And so you're right. It absolutely can impact you, how you act, your confidence, your presence, all of that. I mean, like I said, if that had been outside a work environment, nobody would have got away with calling me that. Exactly. And secondly, now I'm much more experienced in the industry, I would have called out that behavior as well.
Yeah.
But no, I think you make a really good point there, though. I think, we can all be a bit more mindful and just a bit more inclusive by saying, if there is an unusual name that you're not used to seeing, like I will say to people, can you run me through how I pronounce your name?
I always like to know what they mean. Right. I love name meanings.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, and it...
What is your name meaning, Saduf?
What was that?
Sorry, what is your name meaning?
So it means mother of pearl, and specifically the sort of pearlescent light that comes from the inside of a shell.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So it's a color or a...
It's more about that presence of light, which
oh, cool.
I love, because I feel like it really sums up my personality as well.
Oh, that's lovely.
I will always see the light rather than the dark.
And what about Borough?
You means blessed, So I'm basically a hashtag.
Hashtag blessed.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a light bearer.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. And in Greek, when someone says "aphodisesme," it means you've enlightened me. There you go. So we have all got some very interesting, and that's our identity, right? I mean, I know we've. Do you know what, Sadaf, you've got this now for keeps. This is going viral, right? And people are never going to get this from me. You've had this opportunity to get, so it's Sadaf from here on in, and whoever you choose to allow you to call Duffy, that's you. So it's up to you, whoever you want.
Love it.
Oh, brilliant. Well, you mentioned about when you crossed over into industry. Step back one for us, because what would be really interesting, and what we like to do on this podcast, Sadaf, is to try and inspire and guide people about what they want to do with their careers. And some people will always want to move in a clinical framework, and that's absolutely amazing, and we'll promote that as much as we can. You decided to move into industry, and what would be really interesting to share with us is what you were doing clinically, and then that crossroads moment. What was it that kind of then took you out into the dark side, as you call it?
Yeah, we're really selling it, aren't we?
I know. Everyone's going to be... Well, if you're a Star Wars fan, you're all over it, right?
Yeah. They've got cooler lightsabers.
See, we're back on light again. I love it. It's all linked.
It's going well.
Oh my gosh. I feel like when I reflect back on this, there were probably a couple of moments. But when I was in the moments, I didn't realize that these were like those crossroads that we speak about. One, I think the very first one was I left the north to move down south. And at the time, it was because it was easier for me to move than it was for my husband to move his jobs. But that took me out of that comfort zone, and it brought me into having to adapt to new teams, new ways of working, new hospitals. I did some agency work around here. We ended up living in Australia for a bit. And I think all of that experience of just constantly being out my comfort zone was probably one of the first things that's helped me. I think the next one would be, the big one was, I was working at Bedford. So quite a small district general hospital, and it was the time of the national programme for IT, so around 2008. And I was reporting, I was running A&E X-ray, and the radiology manager came over and she was like, Sadaf, there's this meeting. You got to go to it and tell them no. And I was going, why can't you go? She was like, I'm busy. You'll have to go. And she went, also, I really want them to understand no, and you'll be better at saying that than me. I was like, okay. Yeah. Do you want to induct? It's like, yeah.
It's the no you need.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah, it's so much softer, right? Than just the no. Yeah, when you say no, everyone's like, oh. I went to this meeting, I came back out of it, and I remember saying to Carol Darnell at the time, I was like, Carol, there's no. And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, you can't say no. It's a government thing that's happening. We just got to get on with it. And she went, oh, I can't do that. You deal with it. And I was like, what do you mean just deal with it? And I thought, in my naivety, I had no idea what this meant. And it turned out that this was the National Programme for IT and making the digitalisation of PACS across all of the UK. So this was bringing in and implementing digital radiology systems across the whole of the UK.
Just a small deal then.
Nothing big, not major.
Yeah.
I think about 3 months in, I realised just how major it was.
Yeah.
Just what a poison chalice I'd been given.
She knew.
She knew.
She
Yes,
knew.
she did, Carol. You're listening. But honestly, when I look back, probably one of the best things I did. Really hard at the time, really frightening at the time. Me sitting there with huge imposter syndrome as well, thinking, why am I making these decisions on behalf of like the whole radiology department? And, the radiologists are all going to hate me. I mean, to be fair, I made them hate me even more because there were two options for going live. There's like a staggered go live, or there's a big bang, you do it over a weekend, which nobody did. And I went, why not? Like, just get it over and done with. It's just ripping off a plaster. And I remember the project management team we had at the time saying, I'm not sure this is the way we should approach it. And I was like, nah, let's just do it. Be right. Right. It was all right, but it was probably the hardest thing to date I'd done in my career. It was stupendously difficult. And I remember Monday morning, all these radiologists refusing to use these PACS machines. And we'd taken all the light boxes down because I was like, if they haven't got them, they can't use them.
Wow. I dread to think.
Popular. Matron.
My standout memory is one of my vascular radiologists standing out the front of the hospital with laser film that we've had to print out because he won't look at the screen. Up like this in the sky, a light bulb, and everyone's just going, Duffy, if we end up on the front page of the paper.
I mean, we struggled changing coffee brand.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So
that is
it was horrendous.
brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I would definitely say
yes.
that's probably one of my biggest crossroads.
The next day, she lost her job.
And that's how I ended up in industry. No.
Yeah, go on. So, how did you go? How did you go from there to industry?
Fired? No.
They kick you out, just show you the door.
Saduf was the first ever fired radiographer in Bedford.
I know. People say it's impossible to get fired from the NHS. No.
Dear.
Well, I did a lot of digital transformation at Bedford. I remember, we went from typing to digital dictation to full speech recognition. We did order comms, pretty much all they could do in the radiology department we did, and it was phenomenal. And then there was a job in London, and I thought, so within the national programme, you had these local service providers, big ones like BT and Accenture, who managed areas. And so the PACS that I'd done at Bedford was under LSP. And then I thought, I wonder what it'd be like doing this without a local service provider. So I joined UCLH, which I should have probably also thought, oof, that's a big jump in it. Small district general hospital to a large London hospital with 10 sites. And I also learned that all the pain that I thought I had with managing a local service provider like Accenture was nothing compared to contract managing a vendor yourself.
Wow.
So learned a lot in my first probably 2 years. We had the PAC system was ailing at UCLH. We went through a massive upgrade. We went through a massive infrastructure rebuild. Then came the exit of the National Programme for IT, which I had to negotiate as a contract outside of the BTLSP. I did some work with NHS on that exit. We did a replacement PACS. We did a PACS to VNA strategy. We were the second hospital that also took Epic. In the UK, they were like, will you stay for the implementation? And by this point, I was like, no, I think I'm done. This has been a lot. And I'd had so many vendors during this time that we'd had to learn to work with and manage. And they used to all, I'd hear this a lot of, oh, you should come and do what you do for us. You know, all this advice that you're giving, or, you know, I'd sit in meetings and be like, that will never work because the workflow is not like that, right? That's not real life. I remember the VP of sales for Acquo at the time, who is a friend and a mentor now, Mark O'Herlihy, very well known in the industry. And I remember once saying to him, right, no, just come with me. Like, let's go to A&E right now and you'll see that this will not work. And I remember a few months later, they came back with a product and I was like, okay, what you show me now? And they were like, well, we made the changes that you suggested. And I was like, I'm sorry, you what? And he was like, yeah, we took your advice and thoughts on board. And look, we've redeveloped it. And look, and they're showing me this product. And I'm like, holy hell, I think you just did that off of what I said. I also remember saying to him something around the lines of, you can put glitter on something, but it's still the same underneath.
Well, were they the words you used?
No, they were not words. I don't know when. Did you put an adult language warning on this podcast before it went out?
We can bleep anything, don't worry.
Can you bleep me out? Because everyone who's listening to this is also like, she does not talk like that. She has got the prettiest mouth ever, has our Duffy.
Oh, wow.
But yes, there's a well-known saying that you can polish a bleep.
Yeah.
I remember saying this to the VP of sales, and he was like, huh. I was like, just saying, you know, it's still crap. We're still not going to use it. It's still not fit for purpose. I get what you're trying to do, but we're not interested. And then off he pootled, and he used to keep saying, you should do this for me. Do this as a job. And I was like, no, I'm good. You know, cut me open. I'm going to bleed blue, white NHS. I'm NHS till I retire. I couldn't fathom not being in the NHS. And over the years, he would continuously, every now and then, just put a little seed out, and then, I don't know, I remember just thinking, why not? I must have had a particularly bad day, or a series of bad days, where I just thought, maybe I am ready. Maybe I do need that next challenge. And it just coincided with, we'd done so much at UCLH. So I remember ringing him and saying, okay, I think I could be interested. He went, oh, good, because you know that product you told us was shit. We bought a new one. I'm sorry, you've what? And they were like, yeah, we've just bought a viewer. And I was like, yeah, but not just off the back of what I said, right? There were other people that you consulted with on this. And he went, yeah, but yours was a big voice in that, you know. And I'm thinking, I'm just a radiographer.
Oh,
how
capture
on
that
earth?
moment. I capture that saying. You know, how many times I hear that, you know?
Yeah, but that's that belief. Like, we don't believe in ourselves. And, you know, for a long time, radiography was just seen as some slight career on the outskirts of healthcare and medicine. You know, we fought for it to be recognized as an allied health professional. We fought for it to have, you know, a society. We fought for it to be recognized as to where it is. And I do think some of that still subconsciously bleeds into us when we say, oh, well, I'm only a radiographer.
It is one of my biggest pet peeves, hates, when people, for instance, when a patient goes, oh, is it broken? And one of my colleagues says, I'm only, and I go, no, you're not. You're qualified to tell them. Go and tell them. It's part of it. I don't care where you're up to in your career. I don't care. First year student, you're not only anything. And if I have a go at people that say I'm only a student. No, you're not. I am a student radiographer. I can't yet, or I'm learning to, but not.
Yeah.
I'm only, so I can't.
And it's so funny because now I am very much like you, you know. But even still, there are moments where that wants to creep in, that self-doubt, that lack of belief
Yeah,
and
100%.
recognition that I'm good at what I do. I'm qualified at what I do. You know, I remember an anecdote when I was reporting, and I was sat. So I reported plain film, everything but chest and abdo. And so I used to do a lot of A&E reporting. So I'd be sat in a little cupboard, dark, you know, on the edge of A&E. And I remember the A&E consultant knocking on the door and sticking his head round and saying, "Oh, I just want a double opinion on this wrist." And the radiologist was sat there, and I sort of wheeled my chair so that they could get through to the radiologist. And he went, "Now, Duffy, I'll ask you though, if you're in the room." And I was like, he went, "You'll know better than him anyway." And I was like, "Yeah, I probably will. Let me have a look."
Yeah.
But, you know, yeah, it is having that belief and confidence that we are good at what we do. We wouldn't be here if we weren't.
Yeah, it's like when someone randomly asks you to co-host a podcast when you've done nothing like that in the past.
I
Funny.
reeled him in. And you know, there's a couple of really, really important points here. And so if we spoke about it, Boz knows my feelings on it. A lot of what I'm trying to promote is self-efficacy and accountability in our profession, and to really empower radiographers. And I think that, you know, you both just highlight some really important points. One of them, that just to go back actually, which we should promote for the very reasons that you gave, which is radiographers in a clinical or let's put it this way, who move from clinical to commercial, are so vital to the workflow. Because, I mean, in my years of working between clinical staff and IT staff and operations, I don't know where to begin with it, but basically you need that clinical input and what radiographers see day to day to make it real, to make it that magic touch. So what you gave them, Sadaf, was that magic touch. And actually, why shouldn't we shy away? Because some radiographers will get to that stage. I mean, one of our previous podcast hosts tells me about the best student. I think I shared this with you, Sadaf, the other day, but I don't know if I told you, Boz, but basically he's the best student he ever, basically the one that he was training with is now running a post office. Now, I said to him, was radiography just not for him? And unfortunately, the experience that he had took him down that direction. But he said it was savable. And I just think to myself, this is where industry and a different career path within imaging oncology can really play its part. Because if we can salvage some radiographers that may not always just want to stay clinical, and I must stress that, without clinical, we've got no department, but, some people just may not decide this is for them. That's okay. Mm-hmm. And we need to promote these things. And look at what you've just described to me. A whole product changed as a result of what you told them.
Yeah. And that the new product that they bought was phenomenal. It was probably also one of the reasons why I left, was so that I could work with something that I could really see having a tangible impact on my colleagues and peers that was still in clinical. Exactly. And I was like, just imagine being able to shape a product to really meet those needs that I have when I'm in clinical. And Foddy, that really comes back to how crucial it is for radiographers to work in industry as well, because we have a unique perspective on requirements, on workflow, on product, because we've done it. We've been there. We've used the products that aren't great. We've fudged the workflows because they don't meet what we need. We've had to adapt and learn how to get the best out of something because it isn't where we need it to be. So imagine being able to have that influence outside of your clinical role and in industry, so that those that are still in clinical and the students coming up and that wave of new generation of radiographers is working with the best tech available, or the best product, or the best solution, because we've shaped it to be that. Like, I don't think people recognize how vital that real world clinical experience is to healthcare vendors.
That's the thing. Every single person, I think, could probably point out a decision, a change in something, workflow, infrastructure, building that was made by someone who hasn't got a clue what's happening to that
Yeah.
service, that someone's taken away a waiting room, those type of things. And you kind of go, why weren't we consulted?
Yeah.
Why
Or
wasn't
someone's put in an extra box and an extra click. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, this adds an extra 5 seconds onto one patient, which, might not sound that much in the grand
Yeah.
scheme of things, but I'm doing 40 patients a morning.
Well, that's exactly, yeah. Like, I was talking to a GP, a friend of mine who's a GP, about what he likes on reports and things like that. I'm a chest reporter, and he said, I don't want a paragraph of normal, because at the end of the day, if I've read 50 normals, that's two more appointments I could put on the end of the day.
Yeah.
Just tell me I don't need to do anything. Those
So-
type of things.
I'm going to do a little plug now for what I do today.
Do it.
Great
do
segue,
it.
Boz. Great segue. We didn't even. Did you get the text from? No, that's amazing. Because I was going to say, if you didn't segue it, Saduf, I was going to.
Because I currently work for an AI vendor who is revolutionizing the way that we do radiography reporting. So it's AI based, but it's not image analysis AI based. It's around large language models. I hate the use of the term Gen AI, but it is like, think of it like that. So essentially, working off your thoughts and your clinical notes to generate that report automatically. And that's great for like lengthy, complex, cross-sectional reporting, let's say, or my complex MRs and CTs. It's not going to make a difference on a chest x-ray, right? Because if I'm reporting chest x-rays, I can quickly say, insert normal. And have a structured report templated out with my normal findings. One of the things that we're doing, though, to make that AI more adaptive to people's needs, it's not just about the radiologist, but one of the things that we do, which ties back into what you just said, Boz, is we have an AI way of generating that report. So when it goes to your EMR or it goes to your GP downstream service like ICE, the summary or the conclusion automatically comes to the top. So the referrer doesn't have to read the body of the report, because let's be honest, they're not really that interested in it, right?
They scroll to the bottom anyway.
Yeah, exactly. They often scroll through them to get to the conclusion. And the conclusion is always at the bottom. So let's make it more useful for the referrer and just put that to the top, right? It's still in the format, the report is still in the format the radiologist wants. It's still in the format that it needs to be for the notes, but we're just making it easier and more streamlined for other users of the report to be able to just get to the bit that they need. We've done this somewhat similar with patient reports. So when it goes to the patient portal, we're almost putting those reports into layman's terms so the patient can fully understand and appreciate what's being said, rather than going, oh, what's this localization of a lesion in the PZPL mean? And what does a PIRADS 5 mean? Let me Google it. Oh my God, I'm going to go into an absolute panic.
Yeah,
I'm
dead
going to
within
ring the
20.
radiologist.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So it's really, really smart tech. And I will say, I think I've been very, I'm going to say lucky, but also astute in that I've only ever worked with a product that I really, truly believe in. And I think, again, there's a lot of radiographers that I talk to who are like, oh, I'd have to go work for so-and-so or so-and-so. I don't really like them. And I'm like, no, you don't.
Yeah,
You can pick and choose. Work with whoever fits your values and your integrities. Like, work with whatever you believe in. Like I said, I've been very picky, maybe even, to only go for products that I truly believe in, because I want, for me, the crucial bit about my commercial and industrial career is I still want to make a difference. I still want to help. It might not be tangible with the patient anymore, but it's still meaningful to me to have some sort of legacy impact, whether that be on other radiographers using it or referrers or just making healthcare better in general. So yeah, I think that's really
the
important.
organisation is called the
Smart
company.
reporting.
There we go. Smart reporting, brilliant. Well, for those listening, please do sort of look up smart reporting. But interestingly, the industry touch points for the profession is so far-reaching. If you think about AXREM, and we'll talk about that and your involvement in that in just a second, Sadaf. But if you think about AXREM being 80 members strong, and for those that don't know, AXREM stands for the Association of X-ray Equipment Manufacturers. I mean, that's 80 providers. So it's more than just the equipment providers that forms part of the industry, and particularly now in the digital tech era. There are hundreds of companies. You just have to walk around UKIO, and it's quite exciting, and just, as you say, to be part of that legacy, to change something, particularly when you're so passionate about it. Sadaf, is quite amazing. So tell us about your role with AXREM. Then tell us about what you do with them, how you got involved with AXREM, and as I say, what you do now.
Yeah. So AXREM is, it's like a trade association that represents the imaging IT suppliers, I guess. And it's their role to promote and develop the industry as a whole by providing a collective voice. And we do things along regulation needs, technical needs. We lobby to Parliament and government. We consult with NHS England around things that we're seeing or changes that we feel need making. I mean, a recent one being the DTAC assessment. It's a piece of regulatory compliance that everybody is really struggling with. As an industry, we've come together to say what are the good points about that, what are the bad points, what are the suggested changes. We've taken that back to government and NHS England to actually have a positive influence and change as an outcome of that. So that's the sort of thing that we do. Foddy, you mentioned there, it's now nearly like 80 strong in terms of members. I remember when I joined originally and it was about 12.
Wow. Incredible.
And it was just the mainstream players, it was your Agfa, your Sectras, Philips, GE. Just the real big imaging vendors.
The big boys.
And nothing ever really got done. I remember we met maybe once or twice a year, if that. And I remember when I was at Acro, which was like a smaller startup, it was acquired by Lexmark. So in that Lexmark era, they were trying to see what expenses were going out and what we could save money on. And AXREM was going to be one of them. And I was like, I don't think we really need it. Just scrap it. So I think for a couple of years, Lexmark weren't even a vendor. And then I think it was Highland that we rejoined. And maybe a year after we rejoined, Sally is their the CEO of AXREM, and she and her team have absolutely revolutionized AXREM. It's so meaningful now. We're actually getting back something tangible, like we can see the difference that AXREM is making. And it was Sally who sort of said, you're so passionate about imaging and IT and the industry as a whole, but you don't really say much like at AXREM meetings. And I said, well, I'm in the meetings, but and she encouraged me to take a more active stance. And I remember the role of vice chair came up. And I remember at the time thinking again, everyone else has got so much more industrial experience than me. Whilst I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm only a radiographer, I was thinking, I'm only quite new to the industry, so that self-confidence, lack of self-confidence and belief is coming back, that imposter syndrome. I remember sitting down with Sally and she was like, you can do this. You can do this way better than anyone else. And she said, I remember her saying, throw your name in because you'll see when other people vote for you. And I was like, oh, other people are going to vote for me? No one's going to vote for me. Like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. But no, she really pushed. And there'd been a couple of things that I think I'd been involved with that, I'd seen that we'd made a bit of a difference. And I was like, okay, maybe I can. So I ran for the vice chair of the imaging IT special focus group and got that. So Sally was saying, if you try and throw your name in the hat, you will, or throw your hat into the ring, throw your name into the ring, you'll see that people do believe in you. People want to hear what you have to say. And you'll see it by people will vote you in. And I remember thinking, I'm never going to get voted in. No, I'm not. That's too scary. I'm not doing it. Again, she pushed. So yes, thank you, Sally. I did throw my name into the mix for that vice chair. And yeah, I did. I got voted in. So yay. And I love it. I love the role. I love, so the role, it doesn't entail a lot. There's not a lot of commitment. It's more around, I chair our yearly meeting with the chair, who's Bob from Soliton. There are a couple of things that you touch on throughout the year. I've been heavily involved in writing the manifest for imaging IT, where we presented to government and we actually launch on April the 2nd at Bletchley Park in Milton Keynes. So that will be like an industry event. There'll be some speakers. And yeah, we're going to launch that manifest. So watch out on the ACTREM website and socials for that, because that's pretty exciting as well.
Fantastic. Well, that's brilliant. I mean, I think the other exciting thing, Saduf, as you've spoke about your career journey and your crossroads and everything, is reaching this point now, and so advice that you would give to radiographers going through their career, looking at crossroads, but also I'll throw a little, I said that I wasn't going to give you any curveballs, but I'm going to give you a little curveball, but it's an okay one. Is what advice would you give your newly qualified self, knowing what you know now?
Okay, so I'm going to do that one first. The advice to my newly qualified self would be, don't let fear rule you. Like, think beyond the traditional path and just go for it. Like, embrace that fear.
Saduf, what would you tell your newly qualified self? What advice would you give to radiographers, both students and newly qualified, at that stage in their career?
So let me answer the bit about the newly qualified me. And if I think back to what I've done and, where I've ended up, I think the one thing I would say to that terrified radiographer is, do not let fear rule you. Just say yes to growth opportunities. They don't feel like growth opportunities. They might feel like things are being imposed on you or things that you don't want to do. But just say yes, because honestly, whether it was presenting at a meeting I didn't want to, or showing around other junior radiographers and students, you get to mentor, you get to coach. Speaking at meetings gives you confidence. That, like, there were so many little things that at the time I felt like they were scary and I didn't want to do them, but actually it was stepping outside my comfort zone that's really accelerated my career growth. And so, yes, that's what I'd say to them. And I think I would then take that to any radiographer who's thinking about changing their career or taking control of what they're doing right now and becoming, possibly looking at moving into industry, is just do it. Like, don't let that fear rule you. And think beyond the traditional path. I spoke a little while ago at a workshop around transitioning of careers from NHS to industry. And actually, somebody there saw me online and came and hunted me out at ECR. And we had an amazing conversation. And she said, I was so scared to come and find you and speak to you. And I was like, oh my God, no, be proactive in your networking. Like, this is the whole point of networking. This is the whole point of LinkedIn. And if you're not using it, then you're just losing out. And I said to her, you know, what would have been the worst that would have happened if you'd have come and found me? And I said, the worst would have been, I would have said, I'm really busy right now. Can we figure out another time for it? I wouldn't have said no. I said, and if I had said no, then I'm not that person that you need to network with. Like, take me off your LinkedIn and find someone else. You know, the best opportunities, they don't come from that traditional path. They come from like reaching out of your comfort zone, speaking to others. And so one of the things that her and I were discussing was she kept thinking she's done a lot around education. She's done a lot with the imaging academies, which are all closing down. And she was sort of saying, I don't really know what else there is for me. I guess it would be something in research or teaching. And I was like, like, stop thinking along that traditional path. You've almost pigeonholed yourself and you've made some assumptions about what there is in industry, but you haven't actually done any research. You've not actually looked into it. You're just thinking your way. And so I would say to any radiographer who's looking at doing this is, one, do some research and figure out what careers there are and what options there are. If you can't find them out, ask your network. The other one I would also say is reflect. Reflect on why you want to move into industry and what motivates you to move into industry, because that will help you find the right role in industry to go into, right? If you're not money orientated and you're not hungry for money, then sales is probably not going to be for you, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't be customer facing. There are other roles within sales that aren't target driven, that aren't as scary as you going out and having to, you know, really push for that money. There are pre-sales roles, right? So you can be in sales, you can be like person facing, but not have so much of the stress of that. And I think, you know, things like that, you don't know unless you've spoken to somebody from industry. So reach out to people, reach out to the people that you've met at conferences and at webinars, engage with industry leaders. Most of us are going to be happy to help. And then I will say on that, if somebody says, or, you know, I can't do it right now, that's not a no. That usually just means that they've got a heap of work that they're working on. And
reach out again.
Yeah, reach out again. Ask them when. I think a lot of people just see that as a no, and oh my God, I don't want to bother them again. I'll be honest, half the time I just forget stuff. You know, if I've not written it down somewhere or it's not in my diary, I just forget. And so nudge me again. I'm not bothered about it. And I think a lot of people think networking is, you know, it's old school. It's standing in a room and drinking, or it's out on the golf course and it's just nattering. But actually, you know, one of the things I really push for is virtual networking that's meaningful. It's not just an informal connection. Like, go into that meeting that you've arranged or that conversation with a list of goals that you want from it. I will tell you now, the person that you're networking with will 100% appreciate it. Oh, okay, I now know what you want out of this. Let me deliver. Right. And then you're both going to get what you actually need out of it, rather than you just sitting there and going, well, that was nice. I had a half-hour coffee with Duffy. You know, we had a really nice chat, but I don't still understand how she got into industry. or I don't get who she spoke to at this place to get that job, or what I really wanted was an introduction to Sally and I never got it. Like,
Right.
yeah, don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah. Do you know, in networking for me, I mean, Boz and I've met on most of the UK IOs that you've been to since, Boz, and I think we cannot underestimate actually the importance of that. You know what I find actually with what you just described to me there, Sadaf, is most radiographers when you need help with something will allow you to reach out and will find time to help you. That is something that is inherent in radiographers. It is an amazing quality that radiographers have. And I will tell you this: the dirty word of healthcare is sales and selling, and the reality of it is you can either coat around the word and call it something else, or genuinely see something as you described earlier, which is you only really will work with a product or a service that you fundamentally believe in, that you're passionate about. And actually, when you get into that notion of, well, actually, what I'm trying to do is help. And if I can't help, then that's fine. And if it's not required, and you've got to get yourself out of the ego of, well, everyone needs this, because no, not everyone needs this. Not everyone's got a reporting backlog. Not everyone has a workflow problem, but some do. And you just have to be able to get to that sweet spot of knowing, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Like, these sort of things around, to have these conversations, fact find, be naturally curious. These are all the things that, sometimes maybe are not akin to radiographers, because you go in, you work in that department, right? And you do what you do, and then you go home and then you do the same thing the following day. That's really dumbing down a radiographer. I'm so sorry, guys. Feel free to jump in. But what I mean is that actually, that I spoke before, that sign off just doing my job thing, actually it's more than that.
Way more. And I think for you what you said there, the fact that none of us are going to say no is because we went into this career to help. And that's not just patients, like, it's just a need and an innate trait amongst us to just want to help. So like I said, none of us are going to say no, right? We're all going to be there.
Some of us might say no.
It just might be in a different way.
If they do, come on, ignore them. Move to the next one.
I think it's not only will we not say no, but also I think even if we don't know the answer, most of us know someone who will know the answer and will be happy to point you in the direction. So I know someone who's co-chair of AXREM. So if you want to get in contact, just contact me.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I would say, and this is one that I've learned probably indirectly, but it's something that I don't feel we talk about enough. So a lot of the jobs that you want or getting into industry, it's not going to be off of a job post that's on LinkedIn, right? By the time the job post is on LinkedIn, they've already started thinking about who they're hiring. Most jobs in commercial come from network and referrals, right?
Yeah.
It's very, very rare for it to come just from a job advert. And so that's why it's so important to network and, start reaching out to people. I would also say update your LinkedIn and start being active on it. The amount of radiographers I know who are like, oh, I never touch LinkedIn. And I'm like, it's where I'm going to go immediately to see what kind of person you are. What are you posting about? What drives you? And if that's empty, I'm like, well, I don't get to understand what this person is like. I don't get a feel for them. And you're gonna inevitably put yourself to the bottom of the pile, because I'm going to look at that person who's got a LinkedIn presence a bit more. I would say start letting people know that you're open to roles, that you're open to moving outside of the NHS. It's not a dirty word. It's not a secret. You don't have to keep it like this shameful secret and press down and only let a few people know. It's totally okay to speak about it. And I would say more and more, I want it to become almost an acceptable thing to talk about. I remember when I first started really embracing and thinking about that commercial, I didn't tell anyone. And it was so hard to have to just do it all on my own. I couldn't get advice. I couldn't get people's thoughts, because people didn't leave. And if you left the NHS, it was, you had gone to the dark side, you've abandoned the NHS. I want to move away from that mindset totally, right? This is not us taking people out of the NHS. This is us making sure that good people stay within healthcare and stay within the industry and stay within the ability to still make a difference, rather than, like you said earlier, Foddy, just leaving the career altogether. And that's fine for some people. They will absolutely, but a lot of people leave the career because they feel like there's nowhere else to go. And I'm like, that's such a damn shame, because as you said earlier, Boz, we are relevant. We are good at what we do. We have got a level of experience and expertise that is so valuable. So rather than lose it entirely, let's just shift it around a bit and make way for the new wave that's coming in.
Boss, I don't know if how we...
You can't top that.
No. Well, yeah, I think on that note, Saduf, honestly, it's been an absolute genuine pleasure speaking with you today.
Been awesome.
Anyone who's listening to this on radio wouldn't have seen, because the producer will always cut us out brilliantly, any mini toilet breaks, any IT glitches or anything like that. Awesome. Is there anything else, Saduf, is there anything else you'd like to add? Any last final words about it, how people can find you? You're on the Skilled Personnel Network, so thank you.
No, I would say I'm on LinkedIn. Like, please feel free to reach out. And if I take a little while to get back to you, it's probably just because I'm traveling or work is busy, but then just nudge again. Do not just think, oh, okay, that's it. That was my opportunity and I've lost it. No, just nudge again. I'm not going to be offended. I'm not going to be upset, but I will absolutely wholeheartedly say, please reach out. I am more than happy to talk to anyone about anything.
Fantastic.
Brill.
And there's only one of me on LinkedIn. Saduf Ali-Drakesmith. There's
only one of all of us, I think.
I know. The only one club.
The one club. If there is another Baruch, Saduf, and Foddy with our surnames as well, tell us. Anyone else? Please go and find them. I've often done that. I've often gone out and tried to find another person with Foddy or Fodakis Kyriakos. And given that I've got a surname, which is a first name, which is a bit taboo in Cyprus, I should have a U at the end of my name. So that causes me all sorts of problems. One for another podcast.
You see, I just get... So you have an Arabic name, a Pakistani name, and Drakesmith is German? And I'm like, I don't know, is it? And they're like, yeah, Drakesmith. And I'm like, oh.
Sounds more Viking. I like it.
I'm like, yeah, I am Airport Security's favourite person.
We are your icebreakers in the party, guys. That's how I'm going to look at it. We're your icebreakers. Come to us. We'll make the party enjoyable. And that's true, actually. We will. I thank you, everyone, for joining this. Sadhu, thank you very much. Boz, as always, thank you.
Thank you both. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Click the old
Oh,
link
you're a
and
star.
subscribe and like or whatever it is that social media youths do.
Skill Personnel Network. Look us up. Join the platform. You won't regret it. And thank you very, very much. So, guys, lovely to see you. We'll catch up soon.